Okay, hi Sarah. Welcome back to the show.
Hi. Well, thank you. It was a pleasure to be on again. I remember speaking with you, what was it, 4 years ago, I guess.
Actually, we looked it up. It was 5 years ago.
Okay, well, time flies.
Yeah, and you were like one of our first customers because we started the video edition of the show right at the beginning of COVID. And
Ah,
you were,
yes,
yeah, it was
that would have been 2020. That's right.
2020. Yeah, and you were on. And now that I see you, you are a familiar face, but I have no idea what we talked about 5 years
Well, it
ago.
was a while ago. So we did speak about my first book, which was titled Double Blind, the Icelandic Manuscript Murders. And I had, I don't know, the misfortune, I suppose, of of it being published in March of 2020, just precisely at the beginning of COVID. So in a way, it was good because people had more time to read, I suppose, but I couldn't certainly do any live events.
No, that was all shut down. Everything
Yeah.
was shut down. Yeah. So that book is related to this one. Is it a series?
So yes, this current book, titled Ivory Bones, the Lewis Chessmen Murders, is actually the second in a series, but it can be read independently of the first because I do delve into the protagonist's background, which is really all you really need to know for this book to, for that portion of the book to make sense. So it can be read independently. I am planning a third. I'd like to write a trilogy with the same protagonist.
You know, when I saw this come through and I saw the title, I thought of the serial killer Chessman,
Oh,
who was I think in the 1950s. So I had to look I
no.
had to look it up, and his name was Carl Chessman, spelled Man, and he was executed in the 1960s.
Oh, I am unaware of this. Is it Carl with a C?
It's a funny spelling. It's Caryl, and then
Okay.
Chessman
Chess
Man.
man.
Right.
Okay. Oh boy.
But I think he was from California because I think he was executed at San Quentin. I'm not. Don't quote me on that. But I looked it
Okay.
up real quick, and I thought because I remembered that name, and I remembered a serial killer, Chessman. So when I saw the Lewis
Oh, that's
Chessmen
so interesting.
Murders, I thought that that's what you were writing about. But that's not at all what
No,
you're writing about.
not at all.
Okay.
So this book it's actually a a dual timeline historical mystery, and it involves two parts. Uh, the first is the 1627 pirate raid, the Barbary pirate raid on Iceland in 1627, in which pirates basically took 400 Icelanders captive and took them back to North Africa to be sold as slaves. So these pirates would roam the North Atlantic Sea and take slaves back to North Africa, which is sort of a bit of history that's not quite so well known. Um, so the diarist, so this captive, a young woman, wrote a diary as she went along on this journey and explained her experiences, which are historically accurate. Now, the diarist is a fictional character, but everything that happened to her actually did happen to these slaves that were taken to North Africa. The piece of the Lewis Chessmen come into play because she had with her the Lewis Chessmen, which may well have been carved in Iceland. They were carved, they're made out of walrus ivory, and they were carved in the 12th century. And it's up for debate whether they were carved in Norway or Iceland, but in my book, I have them carved in Iceland. And they're very comical sort of features. I don't know, you do have video on?
Yeah.
because I could show you a couple of them.
Yeah.
I don't know if you could see them, but they're very human-like. For instance, this one is the
Oh,
queen,
okay.
and it's not sort of your standard chess piece. And this one is called a berserker, and that's where we get the term berserk. It's a warrior that these are Norse warriors that would ingest hallucinogens before they went into battle.
Oh,
And you
wow.
can see, I think, him biting his shield as if he's in a
Yeah.
total frenzy. And so they're really quite, they have really interesting characteristics. They are a real thing. Most of them are in the British Museum, and they're highly valuable. There are still 3 or 4 pieces missing, and one was found in 2019 in some old lady's bureau in Edinburgh, Scotland, and sold for almost $2 million at auction. So they're incredibly valuable, not just as historical artifacts, but in terms of monetary value. So I know I'm talking too much, but almost done. So in the diary are clues as to where these 3 missing chess pieces are. And so the mystery surrounds trying to find those chess pieces. And some of the individuals that are trying to find them are not what we would call terribly honorable people. They're in it for the money, and then others are just trying to find them for more noble purposes. So therein lie the murders.
Okay, so that's the premise of the book
That's it in
in a
not so much of a
nutshell.
small nutshell.
Okay. So who was Lewis?
Yeah, good question. It does not sound very Icelandic. These pieces, as I mentioned, they were carved in the 12th century, but they actually were not discovered until the 1800s on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland. And it's believed that they were the result. The reason they ended up there was due to some sort of shipwreck when the pieces were being sent either to some merchant or some member of the nobility. No one knows. But they weren't discovered until the 1800s on the Isle of Lewis. And that's why they're called the Lewis Chessmen.
Okay, so when this story is taking place, you said there was a slave trade. They were taking Icelanders
Yes.
to North
Yes.
Africa. So what year would that have been?
So that was in 1627,
Okay.
basically 400 years ago,
Now,
almost to the day. Yeah.
were
The year.
these Icelanders indigenous people, or were they the Europeans that settled there?
No, these were Icelanders. Most of Iceland was settled just before the year 1000, so 900 and something, by Norwegian farmers, essentially, that had fled the iron rule of the kings in Norway, and they wanted to flee and settle elsewhere where they could be free. So these were descendants of those original settlers.
They were European people.
Yes, they're European.
Okay. No, the reason I'm asking is because Greenland is largely populated by
Yes.
Inuits, who were indigenous
That's
peoples.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so Iceland did not have that same history then.
No. But it's interesting you mentioned that, because the 3rd book I am going to have set in Greenland instead of in Iceland. The first 2 books are set in Iceland, and the 3rd will be set in Greenland with some Icelandic ties to it.
Well, I guess when you look at a map, it's a little deceiving because you think that they're right next to each other, but they're not.
Yeah.
And
No.
everybody always says that the names are backwards. That Greenland should be Iceland and Iceland should be Greenland. And the histories are obviously very different.
That's right. And there is some truth for that. The Eric the Red was an Icelander who really was an outlaw, and he got kicked out, essentially, out of Iceland in the year, I don't know, 982 or something like that. And he fled to Greenland and established a Norse settlement there. That settlement only lasted for about 400 years, and nobody really knows why it ended. But it was an Icelander that established these settlements in Greenland. But the Inuit are the vast, so there really is no longer a Norse presence in Greenland, but it's predominantly Inuits, as you say, that had come over from Canada and Alaska.
And probably all the way from Asia, about 5,000 years when it was
Yeah.
all one big sheet of ice up there.
Yes.
Can you
that's
imagine
right.
walking all the way from Central Asia to, I mean,
No.
those people, and 5,000 years ago, so they had, animal skins for protection from the cold.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Had to, because I mean, even today,
Yeah, there was no
uh,
Gore-Tex back then. Yeah.
no. I know it's quite controversial, but they really do depend on seal skin for warmth, for shoes and jackets and clothing and gloves and so forth. And
Yeah.
they do use every bit
Yeah.
of the seal. So it is controversial, but it's their livelihood, and that's what they survive upon.
They never overfished them or overhunted them out of
No.
extinction. And the problem becomes when people kill animals for luxury items.
Yeah, exactly.
That I don't like. But when the native people use them, this is part of their existence, and they know how to
Yeah.
regulate, so they don't
Yeah.
create an extinct species. I'm okay with that. I'm fine.
Yeah, I mean they can't really grow any agricultural
No,
products there. There are no cows, no chickens.
I mean
So
they would
what are
starve
you
to
going to
death.
do?
Yeah.
You're going to eat fish and seal.
So we've got about 3 minutes, and I wanted to find out uh, why you decided to write this particular topic. Is there some connection with your family?
Um, so I had known about this raid on Iceland in the 1600s, just because I had been to Iceland a number of times. But later on, my sister, who is our sort of family genealogist, informed me actually that the mastermind of this raid, this Barbary pirate, is actually one of our ancestors. I was pretty horrified in the big, when I first heard that. But I then, after taking a deep breath, realized that I cannot be responsible for the actions of someone 400 years ago, and it just made that story that much more compelling to me. Not in a good way, but I sort of felt a connection to this poor captive.
Well, I suppose a bit like Alex Haley. Remember him who wrote
Yes.
Roots? When he found out that his ancestor, great 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 grandfather was a slave, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and most of the time we're proud of our ancestors, and in this case, I'm not proud of this ancestor, but I think we all probably have some skeletons in our family tree that we don't know about or choose to not know about.
oh, I'm sure.
Oh, we're related to a lot of people, really.
How much of this story is true and how much is fiction?
Okay, so the diary itself, as I mentioned, was written by a fictional character, a captive. But all of the events in this diary, which I intersperse between the chapters of the present day book, are actual historical fact. Secondly, everything as relates to the Lewis Chessmen is also historical fact. So there's a lot of history in it, sort of little known bits of history. And then I flipped back and forth between that 1600s diary and the experience of the slaves to the present day search for the Lewis Chessmen. So it's a mixture of both. It's historical fiction.
Has the book been released?
Yes. Let's see, what is today? Wednesday. So it came out 2 weeks ago, February 4th.
Okay. How's it doing?
Mm-hmm. It's doing great. It has gotten really good reviews on Goodreads, which I'm particularly happy about because, these are people that, I don't know. So they're totally unbiased reviews. And so it's done quite well.
Okay. Well, Sarah, we got to wind this down. Thank you so much for coming back. Nice to see you again.
Sure. Great talking with
And
you.
the last question is, do you have a website you want to give out?
Yes. I don't know if you'll have my name posted anywhere.
We'll put it up on the screen.
Oh, you will put it up?
Yeah.
Because it's essentially my name, sarawinokur.com. So I have a website where you can find out all kinds of information, not only about the books, but about, travel to Iceland and the history and different quirks about their culture and all kinds of things.
Okay, great. Well, again, thank you for coming back. It was nice chatting with you. Best of luck with these books.
Yeah, you too.
Hope they do well.
Thank you.